Hey everybody, and welcome back to Lindsey's Little Library. So we're here today to talk about my January wrap up and how I kind of started off the year 2021 in my bookish life. I am beyond excited and super happy. I got 7 books read in January. 7 books. That's like, my usual is like what, 4 or 5, something like that. So, and a couple of them were chunkers. So I'm super stoked. Let's just get into talking about these awesome books and hopefully add some to your list, because I'm telling you, they're all worthy of picking up. So first one I picked up, Don't Breathe a Word by Jennifer McMahon. I have been loving Jennifer McMahon. She writes the creepiest, strangest, twistiest books. I shouldn't say, not ever, but I mean, she is very consistent with being able to creep me out, and I love it. So this has a fairy take on it, or a fairy element to this story. So we're in Vermont. We have 12-year-old Lisa. She goes into the woods behind her house and she never comes out again. So we have dual timelines exploring what happened as it built up to when Lisa went missing, and then present day, and how these stories connect and how the fairies come into play here, and the creepiness that comes into play here is glorious. And I'm not going to tell you anything else, because that's all you need to know, and just go pick up this creepy book. It's fantastic. I gotta tell you what stars. I think I give it 4 stars, which is still worthy. So, all right, then I picked up The Point of Light by John Ellsworth. This was for our book club meeting in January that we got together. This was actually a book that was exchanged at our December kind of blind date with a book exchange game that we did. So this is a World War II historical fiction, and it follows the perspective of a photographer who embeds herself within the French resistance during World War II to really just try to do her best to bring the truth to light. Now, she's fighting the fact that she's a woman in a journalist type of a man's world. She has the war that's going on. There's a lot of crazy elements that are happening. The storyline itself was very interesting and very intriguing. Very unique point of view from where she was coming from, and the depths and risks she was willing to take to be able to bring justice to this. I liked how it followed up at the end. It's not like it just ended at the end of the war. We went beyond that and kind of to the consequences that some of these people faced and how she played a role in that. I got lost in the writing. So I think this was either, I want to say it was independently published. Not that that's necessarily always a bad thing, but the writing was lacking. The structure I was struggling with. It didn't flow very smooth. There were some parts that were very smooth and then other parts that were really rocky. So I gave it a 3 stars. It's still a very intriguing story. It's just, if you can get past the rough writing style that it is, I think you'd really enjoy it. It is part of a trilogy. I don't plan on continuing with it just because the way it was written just really turned me off to that. But again, if you're a World War II historical fiction buff like I am, I would say, you know, add it to your repertoire. Just don't go in with super high expectations, but definitely a unique perspective. The next book I picked up, this has potential to be like best book of the year. Best book of the year. So I buddy read this with Candace and Sarah, and I'm so glad that I buddy read this, because there's so many things to talk about, and so many one-liners in this book that are just flippin' fantastic. Like, the first casualty of war is the truth, was one of them. And I'm like, oh my God, so true. Anyways, lovely war. This is a World War I, somewhat World War II, but really more World War I historical fiction. So it really follows the story of 4 different individuals as they navigate through life during World War I, but it's told from the perspective of the Greek gods. So you have Aphrodite and Apollo and Ares. You have all these Greek gods telling this story of us mortals. And I love how Julie Berry, that's who wrote it, in the midst of these stories that we're hearing or that we're being told about these 4 characters, inserts and reminds you very subtly that this is narrated by the Greek gods. And so you have these little instances and these little one-liners that just add so much to the story. It's just beautiful. It is beautiful. It's told in separate acts. So there's act 1, act 2, act 3, there's the finale. And there are times I'm pissed, there are times I'm sad, there are times I'm just experience pure joy. I mean, such an emotional roller coaster, such an amazing story. It's just a beautiful, beautiful book. So if you pick up one book from me from this video, make this the one. So good. So good. And then I went completely the opposite. I don't know if there's an opposite. Completely away from historical fiction for a bit. And I read Alex 6 by Vince Taplin. So Girly Girl Bookworm, I think that's who I got it from on Instagram. Happened to have read it, I want to say like over Christmas break or whatever. And she said it was the craziest, twistiest, like, oh my God, weirdo book. And I'm like, okay, now I'm intrigued because she read it really quick. It was through Kindle Unlimited, so I downloaded it, and it's by Vince Taplin. And it's so crazy. It's so crazy. I don't even know how to really explain it without giving you too much, because I love it that I went in blind and I think it made it. But it's basically reminds me, oh, I don't even know. Psychological thriller about a somewhat suffering business owner who happens to be the person of interest for a very privileged, very rich woman. She's basically obsessed with him, and it kind of exploits him. And I'm gonna leave it at that. And that's all I have. That's all I have. So then, it's quite the journey I took in January, I'm just saying. We're almost there. Then I decided to listen to Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. This was another book club pick, and I decided to listen to it. I use Libro FM for my audiobooks. I love them because proceeds go to independent bookstores, which honestly, let's just be honest, need our help right now. So I found Green Lights on there, downloaded it because I wanted to listen to Matthew McConaughey tell me his story. And it was glorious. So just basically tells, you know, it's a memoir. It talks about how he was raised and how he grew up and the crazy things he did, his philosophies, just how he navigated things, how he decided to say no to certain things because he didn't have a passion in that anymore and he moved on. And it was a really great, I don't even want to call it a palate cleanser, just a really great change of pace for me. I love listening to memoirs and learning about other people. It's just one of my things. So I highly encourage the audiobook if you love listening to Matthew McConaughey. He really brings it to light because he's telling his own story. So that I gave 4 stars. What did I give Alex 6? Alex 6 I gave 4 stars as well. So then we come up to the last 2 books that I read in January. I picked up Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. I was a little hesitant to go into this because I wasn't hearing the best of things. But again, I'm just like, at this point I had really heavy historical fiction. I had this really insane psychological thriller maybe-ish. I don't even know what it was. I was listening to Matthew McConaughey, so I'm like, I just want some easy, fun drama. And this book delivered. Oh my gosh. So this follows Rachel Chu. She has been dating her boyfriend Nicholas, I think for a year or so. They live in New York. And Nicholas basically says, you know what, I have to go home for one of my buddy's weddings in Singapore. I'm actually planning on kind of spending the summer there. Both of them are professors at the University of New York. And invites her along to kind of meet his family. He does not share with her the insane dynamics of his family, how insanely rich they are, how incredible their lives are, how this crazy amount of drama comes into play and tradition, and it's just crazy. And I know why it's called Crazy Rich Asians. I know some reviews kind of didn't appreciate the fact that like their wealth was kind of shown and lathered everywhere. I didn't find an issue with that because it's kind of the point. like yeah, it should be. That's, you're trying to understand how completely extravagant and extreme they are, and so I didn't mind that part. But I really, really enjoyed the book. I'm looking forward to reading the second one. I'm going to take a little break. I'm not one to pick up books right away afterwards, but I have the second and third books on my shelf. I want to know what happens with Rachel and Nick, and I want to keep going into this world with these crazy people. It's insane. So I picked that one up. I gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I think it was just what I needed at the time. So, and then the last book I picked up was News of the World by Paulette Giles. This follows a Captain Jefferson Kyle kid. He was in the Army, and he's now he does readings of newspapers. So he travels throughout rural Texas. He brings newspapers from all over the world and does readings for the people there, kind of bringing them the news. He is tasked with the kind of obligation or the job of returning this little girl. She's, I believe, 10 years old. She was kidnapped when she was 6 by Indians, and she had just been returned, basically. And so he has to take her home. Her parents are dead, so he's taking her to her aunt and uncle. And because she spent the last 4 years with the Indians, she is in a not very cooperative state of mind. And they encounter quite the journey getting to her family. I love the premise. I love the story. I love the growth that you saw within Joanna. I love the compassion that she calls him Captain, that the Captain had for her. I loved the adventure. I couldn't get past the fact that there are no quotation marks. I couldn't. I didn't know. It was so distracting that I had to try to really figure out, is this an actual conversation they're having, or are these thoughts in his head? I don't know. So I was losing the point, or losing what was happening, because it took me quite a bit in the book to kind of get to the routine, at least halfway, and this book is only 200 pages, to figure out this writing style. So I loved the story. I couldn't with the writing style this month. I really struggled with it. So I gave it 3 stars. I want to give it 4, and I just can't because of that. So if you're okay with that, or if you can get past that, oh my gosh, I think you would love this book. And I did really like the premise and the story and what happened and the way it was structured, and the final result was a little rushed to me. Could have been a little bit more, but overall good. I just couldn't get over the quotation marks. So still glad I read it. So those are the 7 books that I read this month. I'm currently reading The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, I think is his last name. Really interesting. I'm about halfway through that one, so that one I should finish shortly. February is Historathon, so I do have a TBR video up for that, so I am going to really try to get as many historical fiction books read this month, including one I didn't feature in that, which is The Children's Blizzard by Melanie Benjamin. This is the fictional story of what happened, what year was it? 1888 in the Dakotas. It's such a tragic story. There is a nonfiction book out called The Children's Blizzard that goes through what happened, which I did listen to, and I enjoyed that one. Little House on the Prairie also has an episode that covers what happened in the Children's Blizzard, which I still remember watching as a kid. So I'm really very intrigued. I know quite a bit about this event, and so I'm interested to see how this fictional story portrays that. As far as book club books, the Midnight Library is one of them. And then I have Black Klansman for Ron Stallworth, because it is Black History Month. So we picked this one up for a book club. This follows Ron Stallworth. He was the first Black detective in the history of Colorado Springs Police Department. He came across a classified ad in the newspaper asking all of those interested in joining the Ku Klux Klan to contact this P.O. box. So he does his job. He responds with interest using his real name while posing as a white man. His decision launched what is surely one of the most audacious and incredible undercover investigations in history. During the months-long investigation, he sabotaged cross burnings, exposed white supremacists in the military, and even fooled David Duke himself. So it's a true story. It reads like a crime thriller, which I'm very interested in, and it has a movie involved. So I'm beyond excited to get into this book. I've heard great things about that. So that's on my list. And then I have a small little library haul. I picked up some books. I have Modern Comfort Food by Ina Garten. So there's a beef stew recipe in here I want to try, as well as this creamy tomato bisque. Like, heck yeah, we're gonna do that. And then a whole bunch of my library holds came in. So these are also sitting on my shelf. We'll see. I do have to get to Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is her story. She's known to the world as Emily Doe. There is a sexual assault case that she was involved in, and so this covers that from her perspective. This is a book club pick, I think, for March, but I do have to get to this book. I have The Children's Train by Viola, what's her last name? Ardone. Based on true events, a heartbreaking tale of family, hope, and survival in southern Italy post-World War II, so I'm excited with that one. And then the group read for Historathon came in at the library as well. So I have The Yellowbird Sings by Jennifer Rosner, another World War II story, and a little thinner than I thought it was gonna be, but those are on my radar for this month. I'm hoping to get through as many books as I possibly can. We'll see what happens. Trumpet practice has just begun, so I'm gonna sign off. Let me know down below if there's any books that you read in January that you think are already gonna be favorites of the year, or if you wanna chat about any of the books I talked about in this video. You know me, I like to talk books. So like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Lindsey's Little Library. So I'm here today with my January my January wrap up. Oh my gosh. My wrap up, what I've read, how I started off 2020. We're gonna start this whole thing over because I am completely backwards.